this is Shubra's topic. Like I had just made it, excuse me, like it may not be a very well presented, but definitely I'll do justice to my talk, which is the baggy eyes. So starting with dermatochalasis. So what are the functional aspects? When we talk about dermatochalasis, I really like this description by McCord, who has mentioned that this dermatochalasis is basically like a curtain which has loosened, which has fallen, and which has got multiple folds within it. So this is basically associated with aging changes where there's loss of skin elasticity that progresses over the time. But if you look to this interesting paper, this is a paper which I really like, which was presented in A. Sockos and J. Sockos in 2016, where they have shown that as we move from eyelashes to the eyebrow, the thickness of the skin increases. Like it is so thin in the eyelash, but as we go towards the eyebrow, it is much thicker. So based on it, the thicker the skin, we realize that there is dermatochalasis, but the main etiopathogenesis is basically the gravity. It can be decreased resting tone of the frontalis, the hyperactivity of the corrugators and the orbicularis, the loss of laxity, and the most important is the bone resorption. So there are multiple secondary causes, one very important being the facial asymmetry. It can be due to tumor or any of the mechanical cause, but we also see it very often with long-standing spasm, which can be a blepharospasm, hemifacial spasm, or a mixed syndrome. However, a cause of weakness of the frontalis muscle, especially with a 7-nerve palsy, this dermatochalasis and the hooding is really very high. So what are the functional aspects that we are going to discuss today? We all know that dermatochalasis leads to hooding associated with lash ptosis. The lash ptosis keeps on touching the cornea, and we have all the corneal problems. So dermatochalasis with lash ptosis, it touches the cornea, and we have the SPKs, and which is a cause of chronic dry eyes. So you'll find multiple literature. In fact, I have given it to one of my thesis where you can see that dermatochalasis is really associated with high level of dry eyes. Why? Because of the ocular irritation, usually in this case, which is caused by the lash ptosis, it releases increased inflammatory mediators. This leads to increased increased osmolarity. It can go so high, like in some of the patient, it goes as high as 350, 360, and this leads to a vicious cycle. So high osmolarity, decreased tear clearance, and the whole vicious cycle keeps on going unless and until you treat this patient. There's a very interesting paper which shows that how dermatochalasis affects the light entering the eye and causes diffraction, and this also affects the contrast, and also because of the lateral hooding. If you do a 60-4, in fact, most of the patient, I usually do a 60-4 and explain them how the lateral field of vision is being affected. And one advantage is that it has a with the rule astigmatism. So this one advantage, like even in the presbyopic age, it really helps if you have a with the rule minus, but therefore this patient usually do not complain much of the visual acuity. However, if we do a high order aberration test, we'll find the coma and the spherical aberration is much higher in this patient having dermatochalasis, and which gets much reduced following a blepharoplasty surgery. So we have already published this article about what are the functional changes that can occur in dermatochalasis and which can be treated well with blepharoplasty. And I'm happy to share with you all that this time we got the IJO Merit Award 2020. So the choice of treatment is basically the surgery. And when we talk of surgery, this is a very simple procedure, basically a skin, muscle, fat excision, and you titrate how much amount of the skin, muscle, and fat that needs to be excised. And then depending upon the situation, like in all cases, it is not that we excise the fat, but yes, with dermatochalasis, definitely we need to excise the fat. And also sometimes we need to do something about the lateral hooding, but most important is the lid crease formation suture. So at the end of the surgery, you can see this eyelash is being directed outwards as compared to this side, the eyelashes not being directed, still being directed inwards. So the surgical technique is very important. The rule of 10, I'll not go much into detail. So this is eyelash to lower incision 10, upper incision to the eyebrow another 10 millimeter. However, generally you can also, in spite of keeping 10, you can also make it 8. So these are real bad situation of dermatochalasis with so much of lateral hooding and brow ptosis, which can be managed non-surgically in the early stage in the form of chemodenervation, fillers, or surface resurfacing like the lasers, radio frequency, targeting all the depressors of the eyebrow. And this is how you do the Botox injection, where you need to target all the lower portion, the eyebrow, and also where you need to target the posterior corrugator and also orbicularis. And you get a comparatively good result, especially where they really want an eyebrow lift, as you can see here. Nowadays, I prefer filler. I have been doing lots of filler for this eyebrow lift, and it really works good. But one, ultimately, because dermatochalasis is an aging change, you need to overcome the G-force, and the best way is by doing a surgery, which can be done by the extended blepharoplasty. I'll not go much into details because one of my speakers will be covering this. But here, I just want to show the difference in a normal aesthetic indication. We don't go the incision beyond the lateral canthus. However, in the functional, you can go much beyond the lateral canthus. So internal browpexy is also one of the ways how you can go for a good lift, as you can see here before and after the surgery. And also you can see you give a nice lid crease, have giving both a functional and a cosmetic appearance. But in situation like this, when you have very hyperactive posteriors and the corrugators, along with the internal browpexy, you also need to manage even the corrugators. So here, this is how we do an internal browpexy. It's a very simple procedure where you need to give an incision to the saphenous tissue through the root till you expose the periosteum, give a fixation suture which passes through the saphenous tissue down to the root and then to the periosteum. And then you go medially, you expose the corrugator and the posteriors. But one thing is that though you excise the corrugator, once you leave a cavity out your pocket out here, it leads to too much of fibrosis. So what I have learned from my experience when in this type of cavity formation, what I do is the fat that I already take out from my blepharoplasty, I put the fat there so that there is no free pocket out there. And so like this is a patient, this tautness, this contracture can be taken care pre and post, as you can see here. But these are really challenging situations. These are real bad dermatochalasis with fat prolapse all the 4 layers. And I'll come to this case later.